It's always fun for me. I did an event recently to introduce our keynote speaker of the night. And it's interesting because when he walks into the room, it's clear everybody already knows who he is, because generally people stand up when he walks into the room and they recognize him. But when I first heard about Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, it was from his service in Iraq, and when he found out his men were in danger, he put his career on the line. He put everything on the line. He'd already put his life on the line, showing the strongest love of all, the willingness to sacrifice for others. He survived, but then when his men were in danger and he forced an Iraqi spy to give that information, the first person to acknowledge that he had broken a rule was Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. He reported himself. And he knew what the potential cost would be, and he did it anyway, because that's what men of character do, and that's what real leaders do. If you read his book, which is for sale in the lobby, if you read his book, you'll read about a man who, despite his aversion to the rainy Pacific Northwest and the fact that he got a start here at Fort Lewis, good stuff, maybe we'll convince him global warming is keeping the sun shining a lot longer here now so we can get him to move over. But you'll read about a man who is in love with this country, who has a passion for the freedoms of this country, who wants to see this country prosper, who envisions a post-racial society where all Americans love the same spirit of individuality, of liberty, of prosperity. He recognizes American exceptionalism. So I think the best way to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Allen West is from the title of his book. He's truly a guardian of the Republic. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Allen West.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say to the staff here at the Hyatt Regency at Bellevue, thank you so much for taking care of us tonight. The service was just absolutely impeccable. Now, I don't know what's going on here, because last summer I was in Wenatchee and Walla Walla. About a month ago, I was up in Snohomish County in Everett. Then I went over to Davenport, Washington, then over to Spokane, and now I'm back here. Are y'all trying to get me to move here or something? I mean, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. I don't know if I can deal with that other bird. Yeah, okay. I was cheering for the Seahawks till that coach made that stupid call. But look, it's a pleasure to be here with each and every one of you. It's a pleasure to be here with the Family Policy Institute, because when I think about one of the critical issues that we have to talk about, and so many people say that we shouldn't discuss these things, they are important, those social conservative issues, because it is a cultural battlefield that we're on today. And I want to take just a few moments to talk about two very important aspects that I think we all need to come together and support. Because if not, that beacon of liberty, freedom, and democracy that we call the United States of America will shine just a tad bit less than what it should be. You know, one of the first things, when I look at the title of this organization, the Family Policy Institute, let's talk about family. Because recently, folks saw what happened in Baltimore, Maryland, and I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. And everyone was cheering for the mother who came out and slapped her son upside the head and got him to go back home and get away from protesting. But think about this. Where was the dad? Think about this. That was one of 6 children that she had. And I'm sure if we took the time to, talk to her, we would find out maybe each and every one of those kids had a different dad. See, when we talk about family, it was 50 years ago that something happened that a lot of people don't remember. 1965, the Great Society programs of Lyndon Baines Johnson. And Lyndon Baines Johnson came up with this policy that I guess he thought would help the family in the inner city. but the unintended consequences we continue to suffer from today. He said that if a young lady has a child out of wedlock, the government will provide her a check. And as long as she did not keep a man in a home, the government will continue to provide her a check as long as she continued to have children. Now think about this. The out-of-wedlock birth rate in the United States of America back 50-some-odd years ago was between 5 to 10%. Today, the out-of-wedlock birth rate in the United States of America is close to 42 to 43%. In the Hispanic community, the out-of-wedlock birth rate is at 58%. In the black community, the community that I grew up in, the same neighborhood as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Atlanta, Georgia, the out-of-wedlock birth rate is 72%. My two daughters, Aubrey and Austin, are in a 28th percentile of having their mother and father in the home. Now, how are we supposed to restore the greatness of the United States of America when we are tearing down that basic fundamental of this country? And that's the family, the mother and father in the home. That's not to say that a single parent cannot be successful. But I'm sure if you go out and do all the research and you do all the studies, you will see that the opportunities increase when you have that mother and father in the home. And just because we stand up and say we believe in that tradition of marriage, when we believe that a mother and a father in the home make a difference in a child's life, that doesn't mean that we're haters. But that's how you're portrayed. But the thing is that we have to go on offense. We have to talk about what we believe in, what we stand for, and not let the other side castigate us as being those haters. Because if we don't do something about this epidemic that we are seeing playing out in the inner city environment, playing out in all of these urban areas, we're never going to be able to turn this country around. Because why? What has happened with the government? The government has basically come in and said to young men, especially young black men, you don't have to be responsible. You don't have to be accountable. We will come in and we will do your job for you. And it's said to young ladies that don't worry about self-esteem. Don't worry about trying to build something better for yourselves. Think about what Mayor Bill de Blasio said in New York City when he wanted to shut down the charter school programs in that great city. The highest performing school in New York City, one of the highest, is Success Academy, a charter school in Harlem. And who was it that complained about Bill de Blasio? Who was it that went to Governor Cuomo? It was single black mothers who said, this is our opportunity to break this cycle. This is our opportunity to make sure that our children can have something better, that we can break this dependency. See, if we continue to believe that the government can provide people self-esteem, that the government can provide people a modicum of happiness, we lose out on what the founding fathers have given us. And that's why this Family Policy Institute, that's why talking about these issues are so important, because my mother raised me with a simple maxim, and everywhere I go I share this. Self-esteem only comes from doing esteemable things. Breaking up families, living in Section 8 housing, sitting back and waiting for the government, that is not going to give anyone self-esteem. And if we don't have organizations like this, Joe, what you're doing, that will stand up and tell people that the family is an important aspect of this great nation. See, I remember, I'm quite sure that when people decided to expand westward for the United States of America, when they came up to the Cascade Mountains, they didn't look back around and ask government to find them a pass. When they got to the Mississippi River, they didn't stop and ask somebody from the government to build them a bridge. When those mothers and fathers were bringing their families across and they were having their children on the way, that's who we are. The indomitable, entrepreneurial, incredible, rugged individual spirit that we have. And part of that is our faith heritage. And I want to talk to you continually tonight about three aspects of freedom. Because when you look at the Constitution, man, turn your phone off, man. You're messing me. You know what? Navy. Navy. The Navy is always trying to disrupt the Army. Anchors away. But when I think about those first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, those things which specified our individual rights, when you look at 1 through 8, you see those personal freedoms there. You see the things that were trying to guarantee our economic freedom. But most importantly, in that First Amendment is a very short phrase, freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof. It does not say freedom from religion. And see, too often we as Christians, we don't understand that right that was given to us. And so we continue to hear people talk about separation of church and state. And we begin to acquiesce to that. We begin to compromise. We begin to appease to that. Instead of challenging people and say, can you please show me where that's written? Can you show me in the Declaration of Independence where it says separation of church and state? Can you show me in the Federalist Papers, maybe, Publius, James Madison wrote, and John Jay, and Alexander Hamilton? It's not there. Can you show me in the Constitution where it says something about separation of church and state? It's not there. It was simply a concept. It was simply an ideal. It was simply a thought that was written by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Convention, because this was the lesson that we learned here in the United States of America. We did not want to have a head of state who was also the head of church. Because the reason why people first came to this United States of America, because Henry VIII decided that he, as the king, would also be the head of church, the Church of England. And therefore, guess what happened? The state became a persecutor of those who did not subscribe to their belief. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, 238 some odd years later, and we're allowing the state. We're allowing the state. We are allowing the state to persecute and prosecute people because of their religious beliefs, because of what's supposed to be their religious freedom. And see, if you have ever been to the United States House of Representatives, if you have ever been in the People's Chamber, you look across the wall up there along the gallery, and you see the faces of all the great lawgivers of history. But all of those faces are side-face except for one. There is only one face of a great lawgiver of history that looks back at the President of the United States of America when he delivers the State of the Union address. There is only one face of a great lawgiver of history that looks at anyone that stands in the Speaker's rostrum or the Speaker of the House. That's the face of Moses. The Judeo-Christian faith heritage is inherently important to who we are in the United States of America. But just last week, we heard a person who wants to be the presumptive nominee from the Democrat Party say that we have come to a time when certain religious beliefs are going to have to be cast aside. See, that's what happens when people take separation of church and state, and instead of them understanding that we're not supposed to have a state that can prosecute the individual or persecute the individual because of their religious beliefs, they now believe that the state is there to be served by that individual. And those beliefs are to be subservient. Those beliefs are to be erased. Those beliefs are supposed to be separated from who they are as the individual. See, if you go back and you study the Declaration of Independence, there's something very incredible about what Thomas Jefferson wrote. When Thomas Jefferson wrote that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed with certain unalienable rights from their Creator. Nowhere in history had that been written. See, prior to that in history, it was divine rights theory. It was that some king or some queen or some duke or some duchess or prince or princess, they were the ones that were endowed with this power from above, and they were the ones that could dictate to you your buy and your leave, your rights and your freedoms. But Thomas Jefferson established that in these great United States of America, every single individual had a connection to their Creator. Every single individual could be seen as an individual and not as a collective. And of those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And see, the interesting thing that happened in 2012 at the Democrat National Committee, and some of y'all may remember this, when Antonio Villarosa, who was the previous mayor of Los Angeles, stood there, and they had to have a vote. And that vote was to put God back into the platform of that party. Now, I ask you this. If we remove God, if we remove the Creator, then who becomes the grantor and therefore the taker of your rights? And see, that's, Joe, what we see happening today when we come to the life issue. Because all of a sudden, man who believes that we don't need this thing called God, we have this secular humanist movement, man becomes the one that dictates what child gets to live. Man becomes the one that dictates when you're supposed to die. Man then subsumes all of those rights that you have as an individual. Man then replaces himself from that Declaration of Independence to believe that he is the one that is the relationship with your inalienable rights, not your Creator. And so this is what we see happening today when it comes to religious freedom. A state that believes that you cannot have that free exercise of religion. Let me tell you one of the great things about the university that I went to, the University of Tennessee. Every single home football game, we have a local minister that comes out and delivers a prayer before that football game. Now, I graduated in 1983, and I was pleased to go back this past fall and see at the Tennessee-Alabama game that tradition was still carrying on. But guess what happened this past fall down there on Rocky Top? The Freedom from Religious Foundation, located up in Madison, Wisconsin, actually had the gall, actually had the nerve to send a letter to my alma mater telling my school to cease and desist having prayer before football games. Now, how does that happen? When you look at the persecution of so many of our chaplains that are going on right now in the military, it can be traced to this guy by the name of Mickey Weinstein of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, truly an oxymoronic title. This guy was so incredibly effective that he brought up a complaint about a nativity scene in the chow hall down in Guantanamo Bay, and the commander removed the nativity scene. Now, see, if Alan West was the commander down in Guantanamo Bay, I would have told him, if you ain't eating chow down here in this chow hall, it's none of your daggum business what's going on in this chow hall. But this is what I want you all to understand. On the back of my dog tag, there's a biblical verse. It's Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. Be strong and of good courage, for the Lord thy God shall never leave you nor forsake you. God has never intended Christians to be wimps. God has never intended us to be wussies. God has never intended for us to be punked. But yet we continue to allow that to happen. Now, you all know what happened in Garland, Texas. I just recently moved to Dallas back at the beginning of this year. The incident that took place in Garland is 20 minutes away from my house. Now, how is it that Christians have to endure the symbol of our salvation, the cross, being placed in urine? We have to endure the Virgin Mary being portrayed in dung. We have to take all of these different offenses, but yet all of a sudden, there's a group of individuals that don't want to see their God drawn a picture of, and they go absolutely apoplectic. Why is it that all of a sudden in the media, the person that held the event is being attacked, not the people that decided to attack the Americans? Why is it in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Target store, there are people that are working there, the Muslim faith, Islamic faith, that say we do not want to touch or scan pork products, and they don't have to? Why is it that cab drivers can say we will not pick up anyone that has a CNI dog, we will not carry anyone that has alcohol, and it's not allowed to happen? Why is it that the University of Maryland, as was just recently brought up, they don't want us to have the film American Sniper shown to show the heroic actions of one of our brave Navy SEALs? And the administration says at the University of Maryland, okay, we won't do it. But why is it that a Christian can say that because of my religious conscience, I do not want to participate in this specific event, and the state comes down and fines them hundreds of thousands of dollars? Because one group has an anger management problem, and we still go around talking about turning the other cheek. If we are to have religious freedom, we got to stand up. We got to fight. You know, there are some times when you have to be like Samson at Rock Lehigh, and you got to get the jawbone of an ass, and you got to crush the skulls of some Philistines. All right. I'm sure there's a spy from the other side that's here. I'm not advocating Christians to go out and get any bones of any animals and start whacking people on the head. That was a metaphorical thing. I know most of you people on the left have no idea who Samson is, Lehi, or who even the Philistines are. But metaphorically speaking, if we are to maintain our religious freedoms and our rights, we have to make a stand. You know, it says in Isaiah 54:17, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you will condemn, for that is the heritage of those who love the Lord. We should not be fearful. We have God on our side, and if God be for us, who can be against us? As it says in John 16:33, there will be tribulation in the world, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. So why are we afraid? Why do we have an entire minority that believes that they can push us around, that believes that they can force us to surrender our faith, our beliefs, that which established this great country? This is a critical time. And if we don't find that courage, then what do we pass on to our children and grandchildren in this moment in time? I do not want to see a time when we are afraid to say that we are Christians. I do not want to see a time when we believe that whatever someone else wants to do as a privilege of their lifestyle trumps the rights that we have in our First Amendment. It doesn't say freedom from religion. It says freedom of religion. And we need to be very specific in articulating that. You know, Christianity is all about the individual. And it's all about individual freedom. It's all about individual salvation. And if there is one thing that should unite every single person in America, regardless of race, regardless of where you come from, it's that Christian belief. Because on that Sunday, we all worship the same person. Why can't we rally together and stand together and make sure that that face of Moses that looks down upon those leaders, the leader of this country, will continue to look down? Why is it that we are going to sit around and stop having prayer? Why is it that we're going to allow certain groups of individuals in this country to be able to get their religious rights and freedoms recognized, but not others? See, I got to tell y'all, I didn't hear many gay organizations being upset when ISIS was throwing gays off of buildings. But yet they get upset over a cake. They get upset over flowers. All because we got to make a stand. And as you said, it's not about not loving the person. It's that you love someone else even greater. And you cannot deny him. Because if you deny him here, he may just deny you up there. And what is more important? Your soul, eternity, or to be liked down here? This is a time to stand. This is a time to make a difference. God did not mean for us to be weak. God meant for us to be conquerors. And as it says in Philippians 4:13, I can't just do some things. Not just a few things. I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. Now I want to close I can't sing real good. But I want to close with a little song that we used to sing down south. Now, I don't know if you folks up here in the Pacific Northwest know this song. But if you do, join along. Because from what I understand, that the largest football stadium in all of the NFL is here in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. So I want to see if you are willing to sing this song loud like you cheer for a football team. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banner go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. God bless you all and thank you.